Happy Memorial Day, everyone, and welcome into a special edition of GC Live. This is the post-selection show. As just moments ago, South Carolina learned where they'll be headed for the NCAA Tournament for baseball, and it's not too far. They're heading up to North Carolina. They're going to be going to Raleigh. They're going to be in that regional, also paired with James Madison and Bryant out of Rhode Island. Joe, just your initial reaction on the news as all of us just finding out right now where South Carolina is going, because if you go back to the just even a couple of days ago, heading back into last week, certainly with what South Carolina was able to accomplish, and I know that will, still cause some issues with fans, but what they were able to accomplish in the SEC tournament, because of that, the projections you saw just kept changing. So all things considered, me personally, I think this is a good draw in comparison to maybe some of the other ones they could have got. Just your initial reaction, though.
Yeah, Mike, I'm in the same boat. It was a wild week in Hoover for this baseball team, right? And it kind of went against the grain of everything that this program had been in Hoover for the past couple of years. So it was a pleasant surprise, especially coming after 6 straight losses. You got swept twice to end the season, and one of them to obviously number 1 Tennessee, but shouldn't have gotten swept by Georgia, and then you wind up getting swept by Tennessee. So this team was playing, with house money essentially in Hoover, and they made a statement for sure. Obviously, you lost, to LSU on that Saturday game. You wish you could have gotten over the hump again against LSU, but that game was wild, and I mean it was just a wild week in general for this baseball team, up and down. So in terms of where they sit regional wise, I think this is kind of an ideal situation. You could have ended up in Clemson, you could have ended up in Chapel Hill, but instead you're with Raleigh. You're in Raleigh. NC State, and to me at least, the weaker of the 3 out of the 3 teams or 3 places you're probably going to go. Because you don't want to face Clemson. Clemson lost a bunch this weekend. They've got, they're going to start playing with house money in the NCAA tournament, and then we know how good UNC Chapel Hill is as well. They've been playing some really good baseball as of late recently too. So I think NC State's kind of the weakest regional host spotter out of all the projections. It's the one you want to be in out of the 3, at least to me. I know a lot of fans wish they could have seen Clemson, been in the Clemson regional, and just to see them again would have been good. But no, I mean, not necessarily surprised, but I think Gamecock baseball is in a good spot. Works just ahead of them.
So as many of you can tell, I'm working remotely. So if there's some issues, Joe will just continue to pick things up. Michael just asked, in case you're just joining us, who is in South Carolina's regional up in Raleigh? Well, of course, that's North Carolina State. They will be the host. And you also have James Madison and Bryant out of Rhode Island. We'll get into the matchup because South Carolina will play James Madison, the Fighting Dukes. They've had a phenomenal season. They're heading back to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2011. But before we do that, Joe, let's hit some ads, and let's just thank our sponsors for today's show.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Our first one is our good friend over at My Perfect Franchise, Andy Luedecke. As I'm pulling up the read right now and also pulling up the ad. Andy's our guy, as I'm trying to find the complete ad read here. But visit My Perfect Franchise for more information. Andy's our guy, the owner. Contact him at 404-973-9901. Once again, 404-973-9901. Contact Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Set up your business.
Yeah, if you're in the process of trying to find a franchise, Andy can match you up. He's done it for so many people that he understands what you're looking for. If you're looking for a certain franchise you want to get involved with, he'll be able to match you up. Free consultation. Give him a call. Again, that number, 404-973-9901. Today's show is also brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond of the Movement Mortgage. We've talked about Clint so many times. If you're in the process of looking for a home, trying to find the lowest rate in the market, give Clint a call. That number is 803-422-6797. Do exactly what our very own Wes Mitchell did, as well as former Gamecock quarterback and captain Perry Orth did when it was time to purchase homes. They both gave a call to Clint Hammond. All right, moving things along. We talked about James Madison.
Yeah.
The Fighting Dukes, as I mentioned, first time in the NCAA tournament since 2011. Just saw the reaction from this team. And certainly, look, this is a team that is hungry to get into the tournament, no question about it. But have no mistake, they've been playing some good baseball. 34 and 23 on the year. They were able to find some success, though, during that conference tournament. Unfortunately, they came up a little short.
Believe we lost Mike there, but yeah, came up a little short. I believe he's talking about James Madison. James Madison in it this year. It'll be really, really fun to watch, see how things go for all of these squads, but South Carolina most in particularly. You're playing in you're playing in Raleigh against NC State, JMU, and Bryant. I believe there is one more team, more squad in there. But yeah, no, I think it's the ideal regional that you want if you're South Carolina. WJM4 says JM was super excited. Athens, and to Michael, what regional do we play in if we get to super? Sorry, I can't look it up right now. And then WJM4 says Athens. Yeah, and then Michael follows up with, dude, we can get to Omaha. Yeah, it's crazy because I mean I think Athens is certainly a winnable super. Obviously, you got swept by them a couple weeks ago, but going into that series and during that series, everyone kind of felt that. I mean, it's not that Georgia was the super team more or less. It was just South Carolina was playing bad baseball. So to Michael's point here, I mean, I think with the track that you're on, the fact that you're in the Raleigh regional, not in the Chapel Hill one, because again, UNC's been playing some good baseball, and even though you beat them early on in the year, I think this NC State regional is it's not one to be overlooked by any means, but it's certainly easier than a Clemson where Clemson's playing with all of the pride, and you got the Palmetto State rivalry running through that regional. I think this one's a little different, and then the fact that you do get to play in Athens afterwards, it's just a better setup. But I mean, obviously you want to be hosting, but I mean, Mike, this is, just kind of looking ahead and looking at the entire bracket and the supers and everything. This is the best case scenario if you're not hosting.
I like it. I really do.
Yeah.
And we mentioned James Madison, and I don't know, how much you guys were able to hear before my side got cut off, but James Madison, what they've been able to do over the last couple of weeks, they can put up runs. And I think one big thing, and I see some of you guys commenting on it, and it's no secret, you don't have to be, you don't have to be a baseball expert to know that South Carolina needs to clean up a lot, whether it be, just fielding, obviously the amount of errors. I think there was 13, 15 runs, whatever the case may have been.
Yeah.
More than a dozen runs that were scored on because of errors this past week. And I think that's the most frustrating part, because when you look at it, it's kind of like a golf game. It's like the drive was there, right? Your pitching was there. But what happened? You struggled to hit a couple putts. And because of that, instead of having a score in the 70s, you're in the 80s. Two things that I wouldn't know anything about, but that's not the point. The point being is you have to be able to put it all together. You have to be able to put it all together. So what makes me feel at least a little optimistic about South Carolina, or at least making me feel a little bit better, when you go back to the beginning of last week before the SEC tournament, this team just looked flat. They just looked like a totally different team, certainly playing the schedule that they did to close out the year, outside, of course, of beating Kentucky and taking that series.
Mhm. Looks like we lost Mike again. But yeah, I mean, he was going on about the Kentucky series. Kentucky came into this building, came into Founders Park, with a bunch of energy, and the fact that they were super high rated. It's like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do against Kentucky? And well, I mean, we saw it. Kentucky's bullpen folded. And in terms of NC State, kind of looking at just everything that they're about right now. Currently, I mean, their pitching staff has some pretty high ERAs. I mean, they only have 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that have a below 5 ERA. And it's pretty. Oh well, you do have 2 guys, but little very few appearances. Most of their guys that have more than 10 appearances, their ERA is above 5. So this pitching staff, with NC State at least, lets up a bunch of runs. And so I think that's their Achilles heel. And this is certainly going to be a regional. And for South Carolina, you need to score a bunch of runs, because you have no idea what version of your pitching staff is going to show up at regionals. So, I mean, it's the offense. And then like everyone's saying, WJM4, the errors too, Mike. I mean, you were talking about that as well. I mean, it was bad this weekend. I mean, they didn't count, they didn't mark every error in the scoring column and stuff like that because there were errors all over the field. It was going to be hard to, mark down every single one, get everyone on the card. But yeah, it was just sloppy. And it was. I had a question on my show last night. Someone asked, "It's like, do you think they weren't ready?" It's like, no, I don't think it was the fact that they weren't ready. I mean, I think it was just misjudging baseballs and stuff. I mean, this team has been so up and down recently. Like it's got to be hard not to second guess yourself when you're playing so up and down, right? One day you're great, one day you're bad. So it's just interesting to see, how like that all played out, right? And all the errors and where that came from, right?
Yeah, and I think too, when we look at NC State, and certainly you have to take care of business with James Madison first, and we'll start to look ahead. But you would assume that North Carolina State's going to be able to take care of Bryant in their first game. If South Carolina is fortunate enough to be able to get by, and they're able to play North Carolina State in that second round, NC State, from a pitching standpoint, they have some pitchers, and the reason why is they didn't go really far at all in the conference tournament. They've been done since Thursday. So I bring that up to say that, you would expect NC State to have the pitching early on, at least from a depth standpoint. Now, I think more than anything, if the Gamecocks are able to generate the type of offense that they were able to generate this past week, not only can that help them in the James Madison game, but that can certainly help them out a lot against a team like NC State, even if they do have the depth. Now, certainly we have to figure out how things play out for, again, both the Gamecocks in that first matchup against JMU, and then, of course, NC State taking on Bryant. But assuming that NC State is able to take care of Bryant easily, you just want to be able to work into that bullpen. You want to work into that bullpen for NC State and really test them. So I think that's what really stands out to me right now, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up the Kentucky series, and I thought that was kind of a similar direction of where you were going for this NC State team, right? Because what they did so beautifully in that sweep against Kentucky was getting to the bullpen, right? And Kentucky's bullpen was always a weaker spot for them, but it had been great up until that point. But I mean, South Carolina, everybody knew that their bullpen wasn't made for it, and we saw it in the SEC tournament too. But yeah, like I think NC State's very similar to Kentucky, like kind of like Mike was alluding to. I think, their bats are alive, and it's certainly, draws all the headlines. Alex Mark, I'm not even going to try to say his last name, but the third baseman's hitting 76, 438 OBP with 19 home runs. Like that kid's, you got to watch out for that kid. He's only struck out quite a bit, actually leading the team in strikeouts, which is interesting. But so again, I think that you just got to play good fundamental baseball in this regional if you want to get it done. And your pitching needs to stay alive. Obviously, the bats need to be good. No errors, no stupid errors. Because again, Mike, I mean, we saw it all SEC tournament. It's the stupid errors that give up the doofy runs, and next thing you know, you're in a one-run game and all the pressure's back on, right? I mean, you had big leads, you had leads, and it just got closer and closer and closer with all those errors.
Why should fans feel good about the Gamecocks going into the NCAA tournament? Because I'm sure there's a portion of this fan base that, and I understand, I totally get it. They feel like, all right, and not everyone, but I mean, I was around some Gamecock fans this weekend, and they talked about it. Even when they went up 8-0, they never felt comfortable. And again, this is speaking from a fan standpoint, talking to these fans. Why should these fans feel confident heading into this tournament?
Well, I think there's a couple reasons, right? One of them, obviously, being the week that you just had in Hoover, right? You got swept back-to-back weekends. You hadn't won a game in 2 weeks. Losing 6 straight is not a fun one, especially towards the tail end of your season in college baseball, right when you're supposed to be getting hot. This team was dead in the water, right? And so I think, and obviously I think there's other reasons why, you shouldn't necessarily have confidence in this team. There's reasons on both sides because they've been so up and down this year. But I think, Mike, the question that you posed, why should they have confidence? Because, again, this team was dead in the water, and as soon as they started playing with house money, everything started to click, right? The pitching was back. Roman Kimball, he seemed like, he was completely out of the rotation.
Michael says it best. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I know it's real easy for us all to say that.
I think we lost him again. But yeah, no, going into Michael's comment, bats is why it's confident. Errors are fixable. No, hitting the nail on the head here. And again, I think, the pitching staff looked good in Hoover. Didn't look great. I think there were some things that you needed to tweak up, but that was the best the pitching staff had looked, I mean, not as a whole, but like I think in some spots, and that's one thing you got to do too, is get your pitching staff all on the same page, right? I think is another thing. But yeah, I agree. The errors are fixable, and I think that's what Mike was getting into. WJM forces Casas could play third instead of Lee Croy, but not sure when he may play again. I know Casas is a big loss, and that was a tough one in the SEC tournament. Mike, as we get Mike back on here, I don't know if Mike, if you have a take on this between Casas and Lee Croy at third base. But you know, I think losing Casas certainly is a loss. The way he's been swinging the bat as of late, especially. Like, I mean, he's been hitting some tanks. Lee Croy, not so much. Has not been hitting the ball as well. Has had a couple errors, very much unlike him. But it's an interesting equation that Kingston's got going for him out in the field. I mean, everywhere too, in the outfield with Kennedy Jones, Blake Jackson. Do you move Ethan Petrie back there? It's an interesting equation going on with the roster. A little bit of Yahtzee.
Yeah, and not only just moving around in terms of, all right, which guy's going to play here, but how does that impact the lineup, right? How does that impact the batting order? So I think more than anything, again, going back to what we were talking about, you're trying to be able to replicate what you were able to do in Hoover from an offensive standpoint. Again, I'm not saying anything that no one else knows. I mean, everyone knows that. But at the same time, too, you're going to probably have to tinker just a little. I wouldn't expect, when we talk about tinker, I wouldn't expect the lineup to look totally different. But it's just one of those things that stink, right? I mean, obviously, it doesn't matter what the sport is. This late in the year, you're trying to be able to stay as healthy as possible. And for Casas, I mean, it was just a freak injury. It really was.
It sucks. Yeah, and I mean, I think with the roster changes, I think the one thing that they're really going to look into, and I don't think they're going to play as much Yahtzee with the outfield like they were kind of leading into the tournament, because I think they like Blake Jackson, they like Kennedy Jones, and they like Petrie where he's at. But again, I think, you know, the main switch is Tippett at second, right? Or Tippett at short. Chief Tippett moving him to short because his glove's been better than Lee Croy's has been recently. So I think it's really interesting to see how it's going to play out. I think, again, Tippett, he's coming off the injury. I think it was a concussion from a Hagen Smith fastball in Arkansas. And again, it was a wild pitch. It was just kind of a freak accident. But you got Tippett coming back when he did get in the lineup. He played well. And so I think that's kind of the one name for me to watch. I don't think Will Tippett's story is all said and done yet.
Yeah, no question about it. And again, apologies for the technical difficulties. This is what happens when you're working remotely. We got the phone working now, so we're just using the phone, and I'm looking at the laptop until that goes out. But having said all that, Jack looks like he might be able to join us, so send him the link if you could. Joe, Jack Veltry will hop on with us. I know that press conference will be starting in a little bit. Jack will be over there to take care of that, but he'll give us his insight because he's been with this team and has done a phenomenal job all season for Gamecock Central. He was out in Hoover covering the tournament, and I think there's things that Jack was mentioning the other day, and he does a great job with those videos after the games, you know, win, loss, whatever the case may be. Jack leaving the ballpark, check those out, does a great job with them. But I say that because you listen to some of the comments that he mentioned, and I think we've talked about it a little bit, Joe, which is this team, even though it was a gut punch for them over the weekend, no question about it, especially when you're up 8-0, they were able to just find something to be able to hold on to and be able to hang their hat on. And I think more than anything, when we talk about trying to play your best baseball at this time of the year, you need something, right? So from an identity standpoint, at least where they are heading into the week, and that's not to negate anything they've done this season, but I just feel like, you know, you needed something. You needed to show something, because what you did a month ago, what you did at the beginning of the year, it doesn't necessarily matter if you're not being able to do it consistently. And I just think from an offensive standpoint, they showed, hey, we can still get it done. And we know that this team could get it done. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that being able to just find some type of confidence. And Michael mentioned it earlier. The things that they did in the field are fixable. They're fixable. So I like it. I like where they're at. I like where they're going to go from a regional standpoint. I like when you look at the teams that are in their region. No disrespect to James Madison, no disrespect to Bryant, but those are teams that you should be able to take care of. And at the end of the day, you need to be able to, go through them and then obviously take care of the host, which is NC State. But this is, from a draw standpoint, all things considered, especially when we're talking about some of the projections going back to what it looked like even a couple days ago. This is great. Having said all that, though, now you got to take care of business.
Got to show up.
Simple. Plain and simple.
Yeah, you got to show up.
Speaking about showing up, is Jack here?
Not yet. Not yet. He's on his way. Sent him the link. Said he should be good in about 5. But no, I mean, this baseball, Jack will be here shortly. And then, I mean, obviously this baseball team needs to show up in Raleigh. You're still playing with house money. I mean, I still think that vibe is kind of there, even though you proved a lot of people wrong in Hoover. I mean, everyone was ready to count you out. And that's the thing with this baseball team. Like, they listen, right? For some reason, as soon as they start playing bad baseball and everyone starts to count them out, they start playing better. So I don't know what's up with that. And so, again, you got to bring your A game. And then Martin, I love this comment from Martin. Cox are going to own this regional if they make the routine plays. Yeah, stop beating yourself, right? I think that was one of the when you were winning earlier on in the season, you were playing good, clean baseball. You were waiting for your pitch when you were hitting wise. And you weren't necessarily tweaking the dials so much of just the way that you were playing, right? You were playing good, clean baseball, making sure you were checking all the boxes. And then obviously when something goes wrong, you try to over adjust and then you get away from it. So I think the routine plays, it starts with the fundamentals with this team, and then the rest can take care of itself. But you just got to show up. You got to show up. Keep that same house money. Like you're playing with house money. Everyone's still, like, your whole fan base, hey, whatever you need to do to get in the zone and to make you play better, do it, because you need to. This is do or die time now. It's, there are no more excuses or anything like that. So you literally just got to, like, show up and keep thinking that you're the underdog, because again, you've won this fan base back over into, and now granted, there still are some fans out there that, are still a little disgruntled with the inconsistency and all that stuff. And I hear you, but again, you've won a big portion of this fan base back over. They're excited to watch you play baseball again. So deliver for the first time this season, right? Because when it's come up to the point where it's like, all right, do or die time, here we go. This team has not delivered. I mean, and it's always been kind of out of the blue. It's like, oh, whoa, like, I didn't see that coming. Now it's time. It's time to show up. And so I think it starts with this regional. It starts with James Madison.
So another thing too that I want to mention, we haven't really talked too much about Bryant. Bryant playing some very hot baseball right now. They just won the NEC. Winners of their last 4 head into the tournament with a record of 36-19. A team that had a lot of success when they were at home this year, 20-4 at home, on the road 14-15, and then 2-0 neutral sites. So look, I'm never going to write anyone off. I know I kind of just said a little while ago, you should be able to take care of business. Again, should. I think everyone would agree with that. But, look, with the way South Carolina has played at times, I mean, if they're making dumb mistakes in the field, anyone can beat them. But if they go out there and clean those things up, combined with what they were able to do at the plate throughout the week and what they've shown at times as well, there's no question they should be able to handle a team like James Madison and be able to handle a team like Bryant if they cross paths with them. And then, of course, what happens with NC State, you just got to take care of business against them. Not going to be easy, especially because you're on the road in their house. But take care of James Madison first, and then we'll worry about the rest. All right, looks like we're going to have Jack Veltry on with us. Jack, what's going on, man?
Dude, how we doing, guys? Appreciate you having me in, and see we got a lot of viewers on here, which is great to see. Thank you guys for all tuning in and listening to Joe and Mike, chat it up and talk some baseball. But I just got done at Willie B, talking with Coach Kingston and the players a little bit, and they're definitely excited about going to Raleigh, as am I. I think it's a good draw for them.
We were talking about it being a good draw, Jack.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, and Mike's bringing it up. Michael, we appreciate you weighing in. Michael said, I mean, baseball's a game where size and quickness, it doesn't matter. You look at all things considered, though, some of the projections as to where this team may have gone. You look back to the beginning of last week before the SEC tournament, before they were able to find their mojo a little bit. All things considered, I really like the draw. I really do, all things considered, in comparison to where South Carolina may have gone.
I do too. I definitely thought I saw like I was, writing a story last night on the latest projections, and it was like UNC and Clemson. And I think it would have been the toughest draw probably of the bunch, just because that's a really good team right there. I know South Carolina beat them in a midweek game earlier this year, and that was kind of the ranked win that they needed to kind of get this whole thing started, where they played a lot better baseball. But that's a tough team. I don't know if South Carolina would have gotten out of that regional. And then you look at Clemson. I mean, anything can happen in that. And we know this fan base. I mean, it'd be the end of the world if South Carolina lost in that regional. And I think, you heard a lot of cheering here with the team kind of when Vanderbilt was the SEC team that's going to Clemson. So I think South Carolina lucked out there. And, I've thought this for a little bit now with these projections. And Raleigh seems to be the ideal spot for this team that I think they can go in there and win this regional. Obviously, the only team that I know about is NC State, because South Carolina beat them in the winner's bracket of the Columbia Regional last year. But I couldn't tell you a thing about James Madison or Bryant right now. But we'll have breakdowns of those teams kind of as the week goes on.
No respect for a New England team. Unbelievable. But we were talking about
Bryant's a New England team?
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
Whoa, that's pretty cool.
Back in the day, the Patriots used to do their training camps there. How about that? But anyway, we lost the football game my senior year there. We first game of the year gave up 3 block punts, 2 run back for touchdowns. But I'm not going to think about that anymore. Anyway, point being that we were talking about this, Jack. Yeah, James Madison, first time back in the NCAA tournament since 2011. They're a team that over the last couple games have shown, it demonstrated throughout the season, but especially these last couple games, they're capable of being able to put up runs. A team like Bryant, they're having a lot of success right now. They just won the NEC. They were very good at home. Different story on the road. So it's going to be interesting. Of course, this is considered a neutral site, but I mean, let's call it for what it is. They're playing on the road. So look, I don't know exactly what you're going to get out of these two teams. Certainly, you got to take care of business against James Madison first.
Yeah.
You just keep moving forward. But, I mean, we talked about before you hopped on, just trying to find that confidence. You were in Hoover all week. You were there today. As depleted, as much as Saturday's performance in blowing an 8-0 lead was a gut punch for this team, do you sense there's just a different spark, some type of energy, something good that came out of last week with this team? Do you feel like they're starting to have that?
Absolutely. And look, I've been on the road for what feels like forever. I mean, I'm back in Columbia for the first time in weeks. It feels like it's crazy. So, I mean, I was in Knoxville with this team too at the end of the regular season, and I can definitely tell you there is a way different level of energy then versus now. And obviously in Hoover, a few wins definitely helped that. I think that run in Hoover was great in my opinion. I mean, you went 3-2. Obviously, you lost 2 games that, in my opinion, if you don't make those errors, then you probably are looking at playing on Sunday against Tennessee again in a rematch. So, it's tough losing the games that you did. It coulda, shoulda, woulda, but I think they've got their mojo back. They've got their swagger. Here's my key takeaways from it. The offense was phenomenal throughout the entire course of the week. I mean, they did more than enough to give you a chance to win in each game, and I think that's going to serve them well throughout the postseason here with Omaha, and why I think they can make a run. Pitching, you got to see a lot of different arms throw. I mean, Sam Simpson hasn't pitched since March 26th. Roman Kimball had been struggling mightily as the opener for Ty Good, and he went out there and pitched very well. And look, my thing is with Roman, those runs should not be charged to his line. Should have been an error on LeCroy, plain and simple. But my point is you saw a lot of different guys throw, and now instead of having like 7 or 8 bullpen arms that you can count on to go out there and try to win a regional, you now have maybe 12 or 13, including some freshmen and other guys that haven't pitched. So it really expands your options. I think it really just comes down to, okay, defensively, what are they going to do? And if they are able to kind of limit some of the errors, I think they can go out there and win. I definitely do expect them to play better defensively. I mean, 10 errors in 3 games was absolutely unreal, and I don't see that happening again.
Yeah, Jack, I mean, obviously the errors, it's the biggest, talk about this baseball team right now, next to the fact that they're incredible rebound in Hoover. And so I'll tail end that on my next question. But the errors, the attitude within the building, is that just kind of something like that they know they can fix? It was a second guessing thing or whatever, or is it something like they're actually concerned about?
No, I think they're fine. I've asked Mark Kingston this a few times now throughout the week. I mean, I asked him, I think it was after the Kentucky game, and then obviously the LSU game with the errors. And then I asked him a little bit about it today, with kind of what you do. And look, he keeps harping on the fact that, honestly, I think it's a little annoying at this point that he keeps saying it. But the 979 fielding percentage, it's a good percentage to have. And look, you made a few mistakes here and there, and you just got to go clean them up. And I think this week they're definitely gonna lock into, okay, what exactly went wrong with those mistakes. And I asked Mark specifically, like, going with now being a few days since the tournament ended, what did you kind of pin down to the reason why the errors were made? Me personally, I just think the positioning wasn't that good, in terms of making the plays. I mean, the perfect example I've talked about multiple times now with Talmadge Lecroy on his error, he tried glove siding the ball instead of getting in front of it. And the reason I bring that up is because later in the games, like 2 innings later against LSU on Saturday, Ethan Petrie gets a much harder ball hit to him at first base, and he, gets in front of it, bodies it up, the ball hits him in the chest, and he's able to knock it down and make the play. So I think if Talmadge was able to get in front of the ball and make that play, they're out of the inning. And even if not, even if the ball just gets knocked down and Braswell reaches for an infield hit, no run scores on the play. So you get out of it. You have a chance to get out of it there. And look, I mean, these errors are going to hurt you. I mean, you're lucky to have beaten Kentucky because Kentucky just couldn't locate the zone at all. But I think if you limit the errors to maybe 1 or 2, your odds are a lot better. But we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess my second question was, I mean, you've been around this team, obviously, like the last couple of weeks, and we've been talking about it on Foul Balls, that this team certainly listens, right? When they're being counted out by everyone, they like to play with house money. They're going to need to play with house money this weekend in Raleigh. Is that still the vibe that they still think they're being counted out? Like, tons of stuff up on the bulletin board, because from my standpoint, at least, it's kind of how they need to play, or else they're going to be in deep trouble.
Definitely. I think they have always had that chip on their shoulder, right? I think, going into Hoover, everyone's probably expecting them to be 1 and done. And myself, well, I shouldn't say that. I expected South Carolina to go 1 and 2 in Hoover just because they hadn't been playing good baseball. But they went into Hoover, they went 3 and 2, they got their confidence kind of back up. I mean, look, it's tough to go from losing 6 straight games and basically getting out of a hosting spot to going on the road and going to a place where you haven't had any success for 20 years, basically. So, things are a lot better now. I definitely think they're going to have that chip on their shoulder mindset again, because this is the first time since 2018 that they'll be going on the road for a regional. And the last time they did, they went to East Carolina and, won that regional, and then obviously lost in Supers to Arkansas. Yep. So I think they're going to be fine. I think it really, like I said, it really comes down to defense and whether or not you're going to be able to score runs. I think they're going to be able to score enough. I think the pitching, I keep going back and forth on it with the pitching. The pitching did more than enough this weekend to give you a chance. But how it sets up for a 5-game format potentially is a question that I have. I think if it's anything like last year where you can clean sweep a regional and go 3-0, your pitching will be fine. I just worry, if you lose the first game on Friday and you go into a loser's bracket, I mean, you're potentially playing 4 or 5 games. Yep. How does that kind of stack up? So, but I think if you win Friday and then you throw your best arms out there against NC State or Bryant, whoever it may be on Saturday, I think you're really set up well. But it really, I mean, you got to take it 1 game at a time. But if you get into this 5-game format, it's gonna be tough to really get out of it. So, we do have a question here from Michael Lynn. Jack, do we see Gainey and Becker more often? Yeah, I definitely think so. And here's the real question that needs to, kind of be figured out. Do you use Gainey once as a starter and really burn him out through 6 innings? Or do you use him twice like you did in Hoover? That's the real question.
Yeah, I've got a take on this, Jack. I think you used him once as a starter, right? Because we saw it was the same thing as the Clemson game unfolding in that LSU game, right? They timed up Gainey's fastball because when Gainey comes out of the bullpen, right, he likes to lean on his fastball, and rightfully so. It's his best pitch. But when you're coming out of the bullpen, it's a lot easier to time because he's relying on it more. When he's a starter, he has to use more of his arsenal a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yes, he's still using the fastball a little bit more, but as a starter, he's forced to, diversify it a little bit, and then he can't just get comfortable with that fastball because, again, he's still so young that I think guys are timing up that fastball. I think you throw Gainey in as a starter because, again, I felt like I watched that Clemson game all over again in that LSU game, dude.
I would throw him. I don't know what they're going to do pitching-wise yet. I would, if you win Friday, start Gainey Saturday. If you going 2-0 in the regional makes it everything a lot easier because I believe if I have it right, if they were to go 2-0, whoever plays them on Sunday would have to beat them twice.
Correct.
So that makes it a lot easier.
And real quick about a schedule note, it was just announced South Carolina will play James Madison at 2:00 on Friday. So if you go up to that game, they will be the early game, which is not going to be a surprise, right? A lot of these home teams, the teams that are hosting regionals, like to play at night. Their fans are able to come on out and have a couple, cold ones in the parking lot beforehand. So 7:00 will be NC State and Bryant in Rhode Island, as Jack just learned today. And the Gamecocks will take on James Madison at 2:00. Games will be covered and carried on ESPN Plus. So just a heads up, ESPN Plus will be carrying that. Now, if they get into the if necessary game on Monday, we'll worry about that a week from now. But there is a possibility that maybe it won't be on, ESPN Plus for that. But one step at a time. First up, Gamecocks, James Madison, 2:00 Friday. So tell your boss that you have to, take your kids to school or something and just go up to Raleigh. You'll be good.
Yeah, and honestly, it doesn't surprise me that they're playing at during the day. I was just on the phone with someone kind of asking me, like, how does it kind of work with that? And obviously, my reference point is to last year when South Carolina was hosting a regional and they got to play at night. I mean, like you said, Mike, the hosts like to play at night, and it just makes more sense. And look, again, maybe it's just another thing that they can add to the chip on their shoulder, but we'll have to see. Kind of going back to the pitching, though, we did get a question from WJM4 who asks, do they start Eli Jones? If I had to guess on who they're going to start Friday, I would probably go I would go Eli. I don't know. It really just depends. But, again, like Joe and I were saying kind of before we were talking about the times, I definitely think if you win Friday, you start Gainey Saturday. It makes a world of difference if you can win the first two games. And look, I don't know about anything about this NC State team this year yet, but I do remember they were a gritty, tough team last year that South Carolina really had to, go wire to wire with to beat. And it's going to be tough, but I do think there is a path to winning this regional and somehow, making a run here despite, some people kind of wanting change to happen. And, you got to you can't really look at it that way. You got to focus on the now and, what you can do moving forward.
There you go. Jack Veltry. Be sure to follow his coverage all week long up in Raleigh. We'll be getting you guys geared up for the games. We'll have plenty of Gamecock content on baseball today on Gamecock Central. So head on over to GC. I'm going to be doing my annual breakdown of, the teams and all that kind of fun stuff. So if you like to look within the numbers and also know where teams are from, we'll put the RI next to Bryant for people like Jack so they know. You know where James Madison is, though, right?
Yeah. They're in Virginia, right?
There you go.
Yeah. Your boy Chesney is over there. How's he? I'm sure he's feeling real hyped up to, get some banter in with you.
Yeah, my James Madison polo will be in the back of the closet.
No, Mr. Mike Gamecock this weekend, thankfully.
Yeah.
Man.
They're not playing Virginia, so we don't have to.
No Virginia. No.
Well, again, Jack, appreciate you hopping on, man. And
Florida. Mike, we didn't hit on this yet.
Real quick, I was wanting to hit on this. What regional? So hold up, I'm getting lost.
I don't
in
know what regional they're in.
I got you. I'll look.
Florida's going to Corvallis. Am I right on that? They're going to Oregon State.
I don't know.
They're going to.
I don't know how they got in.
They're going to Stillwater. My take on Florida, and I learned this a few minutes before the show began. Charleston got screwed over. How do you have 42 wins this year? and you win the conference title regular season championship, and then you lose a tough one against UNCW, and I think it's the CAA tournament in the championship game, and you lose and you don't get the invite, but Florida does. I don't get it. I think this Florida team is very overrated. It wouldn't shock me if they made a little bit of a run, but I was definitely surprised, and I think a lot of people were. But I will say, from watching the watch party and stuff, I'm sure Gamecock fans will like to hear this. Like I said, there was a ton of cheering from the players when Vanderbilt got put to Clemson, and then I think LSU got sent to Chapel Hill, which
They did.
also led to a lot of cheering. So I think South Carolina got a really good draw, like we said, and Florida, I was definitely shocked.
All right, there you go. He's Jack Veltry, Intern Joe. I'm Mike. You appreciate everyone that tuned in today. Be sure to follow Gamecock Central all week long. If you're not a subscriber, sign up today. Just $1 for your first month. It is a perfect time to be able to sign up, because not only do you get all the baseball coverage, which is going to be plenty of, and hopefully there'll be a lot more coverage over these next couple of weeks, and hopefully the Gamecocks are able to make a run here. But in addition to that, a lot going on right now when it comes to football recruiting. Things are really going to pick up, as they've done in the past when we head into the month of June. So be ready for that as well. Again, he's Intern Joe. I'm Mike. Thank you that watched today. Enjoy your Memorial Day, and we'll catch you later this week on GC Live.